I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Hello. All right, guys. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble, and welcome back, guys. I was traveling, obviously. I was in DC for the anti-war rally. So that was a pretty fun time, pretty exciting. It is also very hot in DC right now. I don't know what that's all about, but the heat kind of surprised me a bit. But then I came back to Boston and it was warm here too. So I was just kind of like, what is happening to the weather? Because I was ready to put on my jacket. Let me make sure. Okay, there we go. I was making sure Joe got the link. But yeah, like it's great to be back home, but it was a great trip. So super excited. So Jill will be coming on with me tonight. I'm pretty sure you guys may have plenty of questions. There was the announcement made today about Dr. Wes's campaign. So once Jill comes into the back, I'll go ahead and add her to the stream. But what's that, Lana? Hot in Cali too. Interesting. Yeah, it started to cool off a bit before I left to go to DC. So I took like my jacket with me and everything. So when I got there, it wasn't just hot, it was also kind of humid. And so I was like, oh my God, it is hot, it is hot, it is hot. So I just wasn't used to hot weather anymore. So I was like, please don't bring this back. I'm ready for fall and I'm ready to just do the fall thing. All right. And I think Dr. Jill Stein is here. Jill, whenever you're ready, I'll go ahead and bring you in. All right, guys. So my special guest tonight is Dr. Jill Stein. She was a former presidential candidate for the Green Party. Welcome back, Jill. Thank you so much for joining.
Great to see you, Sabby. Really good to be with you.
All right. So before we get into the recent announcement from Dr. Wes's campaign, I want to go back to the beginning when the announcement was made that Peter Dow would be the campaign manager, because I remember, a lot of people were like shocked, or some people were angry because we remember Peter Dow's experience from the Bernie Sanders campaign. And there was a lot of like attacks coming towards Dr. Westway. And then you actually tweeted, FYI, I was the one who recommended Peter Dow. And I think that gave people like some type of pause. I think a lot of people were just like, oh, whoops. And so I want to start there in reference to why you made that decision in reference to selecting or recommending Peter for the campaign manager position.
So this goes back like very early days of the campaign. And, we had persuaded Cornell to run Green, and he came over and he didn't have anybody to run his campaign then. And, and so I had like stepped in to be acting campaign manager and brought in a treasurer and FEC compliance and, people to just like get the basics done and help him transition. And I'm not a campaign manager. I've never been a campaign manager, and I needed help to just do a lot of practical things. And there wasn't anybody that I could call who had had experience in a national scale campaign as big as this could be. So I really wanted to talk to someone who sort of knew the ropes for kind of state of the art campaign stuff. And, I've run a lot of grassroots campaigns, which are great, but you're always limited by kind of state of the art, which you don't know, and the Democrats and Republicans, they hoard all this stuff. And the people who know how to do it are not allowed to work with anybody else. It's a career ending move for anybody who works in that realm to work with a third party. It's like, it's over. You're killed. You're dead. Your profession is gone. So it's very hard to get advice and support. But Peter had already burned his bridges with the Democratic Party. And he was one person I knew. He had been working with the Greens for a while. He had kind of totally rehabilitated himself. He was a total attack dog for the Democrats. And, to his credit, he grew up in war. He grew up in blood and gore. So he had Trump derangement syndrome before there was Trump. But for him, it was Bush derangement syndrome. So he was wedded to the Democrats based on the trauma of his own upbringing. But to his credit, he took these online debates seriously, and eventually over the years they changed his mind. So eventually he left the Democrats and became then a target for the Democrats, and totally smeared and attacked for everything that he did and still does by them. And he began to become our support just online. He began to do sort of digital battle on behalf of Greens. At some point, I think during 2020, he supported Sanders. And then when Sanders threw in the towel and went to, told everybody go support Hillary Clinton, Peter Dow didn't do that. And instead he went to the Greens and he started supporting Howie Hawkins. So I had some relationship with him, though I didn't know him personally, but a lot of Greens did, and felt very good about him and felt like he was trustworthy, and he had proven himself over the years. So I started calling him early in the campaign just for practical advice about, online stuff and digital stuff and things I had no clue about how to do. And he was extremely helpful and very thoughtful and very nice to work with. And as I racked my brains for other people who could fill in for the campaign, you could count them on one hand. And I tried to bring them all to the Wests and introduce them. And we had one Zoom meeting, and the West said, oh, no, he would never do. He was way too much an attack dog for the Democrats, basically to that effect. And then not another word for 3 months. And then the next thing I heard was that he had been asked to be campaign manager. So that's how that happened. I had made the introduction because he had a lot of skills. And I just thought he was someone that the Wests should know to, consider and make their own judgment and consider whether he might be useful. But,
Jill,
I wasn't saying. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by, can you explain to people, what do you mean by looking for campaign managers in the space? Because a lot of the criticism that came that way when Peter was selected was they couldn't find anyone else. What do you mean when you say that the Democratic Party hoards those particular roles? And in reference also to third party campaigns, who was your campaign manager or Howie's campaign manager, if you don't mind?
So the campaigns that I have run in have always been grassroots campaigns. And we've always been very limited by not having the skills and the knowledge to run full bore, hard fighting national campaigns. We just didn't know what are the digital tools. And, it's a specialty unto itself. And you don't know this by running for office. You have to have done this. It's sort of learned on the job, as an apprentice, one person at a time. And there's this firewall between what you can do as a grassroots candidate, which is what I've always done. And that's the limit. You're constantly butting up against what you don't know how to do. The The whole thing is just so run by digital infrastructure right now. If you don't have a handle on what those tools are, there's not like some public forum where you can find out. These are skills that are very carefully, it's like trade secrets that are really hoarded by Democrats and Republicans, and you are not allowed. You are very specifically forbidden. If you are someone who gets hired to do this stuff for Democrats, you do not dare work for a third-party candidate because it will be your last job.
So this explains why, because some of the criticism I had before about the Green Party, and Justin's been on the show, and I told him, I said, the Green Party has to want to win. And I said, where's the marketing? Where's the advertising? This explains why that was limited.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. All across the board, whether it's on social media or, I mean, I don't pretend to understand the digital infrastructure and platforms that campaigns run on now. It's both communications, it's fundraising, it's networking, it is enabling community groups to find each other. There's just this whole elaborate infrastructure that really took off with Obama. And if you haven't done it, you don't have a clue how to do it or who to even talk to. It's not like this stuff is out there. I mean, there's gobs of it out there, but you're just stabbing in the dark if you haven't been an apprentice and learn how to do it. It happens, you know, you go to campaign school by running a campaign. Basically.
So you didn't
and the
have
Democrats have their own schools, and then Greens have their schools, and they're, you know, Greens are sort of like the 1990s version. You know, it's not the 2000s version. And so we can't do what they do. And, you know, so I really wanted to find for this campaign, I thought finally we had a candidate with the stature that we could find someone to really cross that line and help us learn how to do this.
So you didn't
Sorry,
so
go
you
ahead.
you didn't have a campaign manager.
I had a campaign manager, but a grassroots campaign manager, not someone who knew how to do this stuff.
Okay. Not
So
someone who's
you're
aware of, like,
just
the digital.
operating at a whole different order of magnitude. You're doing grassroots stuff. You're like not in the 21st century digital campaign.
So Jill, how did you get on the ballot in over 40 states? Because I think, you know, and we'll get to this ballot access issue that's obviously going to come up in reference to Cornel West campaign. How were you able to do that?
The old-fashioned way. And ballot access, there's no digital shortcut to ballot access. Ballot access is, you have to raise the money, and there's all sorts of digital tools for raising money. You know, doing it the old-fashioned way is very hard, but we did it that way, you know, through email and a little bit of digital stuff, but it was really kind of old-fashioned fundraising. We raised money, but the Green Party is a decentralized party. We have state level chapters in most states. It's not 50, but it's, you know, 40, something like that. We have a lot of state chapters, and then some local chapters without state chapters. So you have to work with the states in order to get on the ballot. You can buy your way on, like No Labels, a totally fake corporate front group, which is, you know, sponsored by billionaires and millionaires in order to run centrists and pretend that they're running a different party. They're just a corporate, total fake group. How are they getting on the ballot? They don't have any grassroots network. They're buying their way on the ballot. How much are they raising to do that? $70 million is the figure that's out there. That's what they're raising. And what are they spending it on? They're not, you know, they don't have any kind of ground game. They don't have organizers. They're not, you know, sending out social media and press releases. They're not, they're not sponsoring candidates to go to rallies. All they're doing is getting on the ballot, and very little other media stuff. And that $70 million is their budget. We got on the ballot for about somewhere around 750,000, something like that. You know, so $1 million or under, because that's how invaluable a grassroots network is. And for Greens, fighting politically and fighting the system. You can't do this without a fight, and you have to really fight to engage ballot access, and you have to fight off the attacks of the Democrats. You have to fight rules that are intended to basically eliminate competition and stop you before you're even out of the starting gate. And Greens have engaged this fight for 20 years. And so state by state, in every state, it's different. This is part of how they keep you off the ballot. They have rules that you have to be a real policy wonk in order to follow, and they change a little bit year by year. You have to really watchdog this stuff. It takes a whole culture of ballot sovereignty. You have to own the electoral system, and you have to fight to stay in it. And then you have to collect a gazillion signatures. So it's very complicated. But if you have a group in every state who's watchdogging this stuff and really staying on top of the rules and the procedures, and they're all very complicated. They all have different rules. And sometimes you need them to get notarized, and then you need to have the signature carriers notarized. Sometimes you can have people from out of state come and help, but sometimes the rules don't allow that. The rules are unique. In every state, they're different, and it's a total quagmire. It's not something you can learn how to do in one cycle. You have to have done this. It's like, tools in the digital realm. You have to learn them by doing them. Same thing for ballot access. You can't be a new party or a new candidate and think you're going to get on. It takes really a long tradition of fighting the system and knowing how to fight it. That's how you get on the ballot.
Yeah, I want to bring up the example for people who may not remember. Matthew Ho was running as a Green in North Carolina, and he met the requirements. He got the signatures that he needed to run, and the Democratic Party came in and said that some of his signatures weren't valid, which was obviously not true, to take the Green Party off of the ballot. So what Jill is explaining is that there's all these things that you have to go through, extra work you have to do as a third party candidate just to get on the ballot. And then the Democratic Party, or in the case of libertarians, the Republican Party can decide to change the rules or remove you. That's what happened to Larry Sharp in New York when he was running as a libertarian. Quick question in reference to the Libertarian Party. How were they able to get 50 states in reference to ballot access?
They have corporate donors. In a nutshell, they have corporate donors, so they can rake in a lot of money and buy their way onto the ballot. They're not really an active grassroots party that I have seen, sometimes a little bit, but that's not like their driving force. So that explains how they get on the ballot all over the place, because they have big donors.
And that'll be the same for the Forward Party. And for, like you said, no labels. This all makes perfect sense now. You just got to follow.
Which is why this, this ballot line, the green ballot line, it's like the one line that can really get in there and fight the fight for working people, anti-war, climate survival, the democracy crisis. If we want, skin in this game, the Green Party ballot line is how to do it. And that's why, it's a disappointment not to have Cornell doing that. But I want to explain for people why this makes sense, why it makes sense for Cornell, and why it's not over. It's not over. So yeah.
Okay. Let me show the announcement video first. So a lot of us woke up to this morning, where Cornel West said people are hungry for change. I want to go ahead and play this announcement here.
We need you to be part and parcel of wrestling with this corporate duopoly, this two-party system that impedes, it gets in the way of the unleashing of the kind of policies of abolishing poverty and homelessness, of dealing with working wages, cutting back on militarism, and most importantly, trying to ensure that the best of who we are as a people can be more manifest, can be more concrete, because the crisis is real and these catastrophes are bombarding us. Please come join us.
So this is the new branding for Cornel West's campaign. And that's actually He put here, I'm running as an independent candidate for president of the United States to end the iron grip of the ruling class and ensure a true democracy. Jill, I know you issued a statement today that represents you and Ajamu Baraka. And so a lot of people, I think, have tuned in to hear your take about this and why do you feel Dr. West will be here tomorrow, but I want to hear like your perspective as well. Why do you feel that this may be the right decision in reference to Dr. West's campaign, and how did these events transpire?
Yeah, I mean, as he says himself, he has a calling, he has a calling, he has a mission. He's been on this mission for his whole life. He really has. And his voice, is unique. He is not accustomed to being part of a complex team who's telling him that we have this agenda, we have to uphold this agenda, we have talking points, we want to be making these talking points. We have various commitments we want to fill. We have state parties that we have to work with, and each state party is a little universe unto itself. It's a lot of a team building of its own nature, and it's very hard for anyone who has not been a member of a party already to suddenly become a card-carrying member of the party in the heat of a presidential campaign. It's just really hard. I see Cornel as an incredibly gifted and powerful voice, but he's not been a candidate before. And this is a lot to learn in one campaign, a lot to learn very fast. And people don't necessarily develop those allegiances right away, and maybe not necessarily ever. And when we embarked together, it was a bit of an exploration. It always is. When new candidates start, they're often starting their exploratory campaigns, and they will call it an exploratory campaign for, weeks or months sometimes. So I sort of view this as an exploratory campaign, and where Cornel is on a very steep learning curve as a new candidate, and his power is in like the uniqueness and liberty of his voice. One of his phrases commonly is that I'm a free Black man, and I'm going to speak from my heart, and I'm going to follow my heart and my vision. That's his power. And as I saw this roll out over the weeks and months, I just saw how Cornel was kind of feeling caged. And now this is my own words, here, totally my own words. But I hear him so much as his own person who so values his freedom, his inspiration. He talks about being a jazz musician. You got to be able to improvise. Hard to do that, when you've got this whole orchestrated team that's supposed to be doing this thing together. So as much as I really want to be working with Cornel and on his team and his on our team, sometimes it's just not the right time. And I feel like Cornel needs to be free. He needs to be free as a candidate. But if you're running with a political party that has like 25 or 30 or 35 little subdivisions and you have to court them all, it's not what candidates really want to be doing unless they have really come to believe that this is about building an organization just as much as it's about talking to voters directly. Cornel really wants to talk to voters directly. He should be able to do that. And I think he just began to feel like he also had to do this whole thing with the organization. Now you'll hear from him himself, and he'll do a much better job of telling you why this is right for him. But I can tell you, as Greens, having done this twice, you're expected as a presidential candidate, you're expected to be there hand-holding the state parties, helping them fight this fight, helping them do their ballot and petition drives. And the work is very much part of the campaign. It's not just, speaking to voters on the issues that you want to talk about. A lot of this is just being a servant of the movement in ways that you don't really want to do, but you have to do it. The candidate sort of has to keep turning the crank. And that's right for some people and it's not right for other people. And it's very hard to come to terms with all of this all at once. So I totally understand where he's coming from, and I want him to be him.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So when you mentioned that the Green Party, it was explained to him that as a party, or as a team, like you have talking points, et cetera, and he wants to speak directly to the voters. Is that to say that as a Green Party presidential candidate, because what some people may hear with that statement is that as a Green Party presidential candidate, that they can't just kind of go off on their own free will, that they have these talking points that is coming from the party or the team that's working on the campaign with the party, and that's what they have to abide by. And then also as a Green Party presidential candidate, does that mean that he cannot speak directly to the voters?
Yeah. So let me just say that when you're running as a Green, and I imagine with other parties, you're going to hear from people. So at the end of the day, you can do what you want and you have the power to do that. But you're going to hear from people that you're looking to for their support. You're looking for their help, whether it's, messaging, whether it's support on social media, whether it's holding rallies, whether it's, getting out and collecting signatures. You are part of a team. And people are going to make demands of you like you're making demands of them. That's just how a complicated organization works. You can go off and do your own thing. And, most candidates do that to some degree. But that dialogue is still going to surround you. And you have to tell people, no, I'm not doing it that way. Or not answer them at all. But there is this presumption that you're working as a team. And so you've got to negotiate that. And some people have been doing that for a long time. For myself, being in the Green Party, that's expected. I don't expect things to be otherwise. And I know that there are going to be a lot of expectations floating around that I need to interface with. Or maybe I need to educate people and tell them why, why we don't use certain language, like why among Greens, for example, there's a lot of objections if you call Putin a gangster. Some people won't like that. Like people on RBN won't like that. If you're calling one side a gangster but not the other side a gangster, and you're not calling Joe Biden a gangster or a dictator or whatever, you're going to hear from the party about how you're addressing the war or NATO or other things. And there are a lot of sensitive issues out there, and you're just going to hear from people about anything that's hot button. And there's a lot of hot button stuff. So sometimes you have to educate people. I tried to make this point based on the views that I think most of us share in the Green Party, that there's no good guys in the Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. And it's not okay to just demonize Putin without recognizing, this is a provoked war. I'm sorry, this is not an unprovoked war, shall we say. It's a criminal and murderous war, but it's part of a bigger criminal and murderous imperial project. It's a response to that, And so I don't like criticizing one part of this without acknowledging the other part. The whole system is very corrupt and violent. And I'll get a lot of pushback from Greens if I don't do that, which is fine with me because I'm in the same place. But, there's a lot of this dialogue that's going on constantly around these many hot button issues where we are taking a stand because we have to. And if you're not accustomed to that kind of vigorous back and forth, it can really grate on your nerves for people who are new to this and they're not comfortable, with the constant little fist fights going on. And, that's just part of being in a political party. There's a lot of dialogue and you're having a lot of debates all the time. Some people find that really annoying. And I think it's hard to just be plunked down in the middle of that, where you're really depending on a lot of people for their support, fundraising, ballot access, communications, all kinds of stuff. You need their support. So they're going to ask it from you too. And that's just the way the game is played in large political coalitions. I mean, I myself came to this as an advocate. You know, I was not a political person. I was an advocate. I was trying to help build coalitions to, you know, to shut down coal plants was kind of the first big action. Or before that, it was to get money out of politics in Massachusetts when we had a referendum on clean elections. And so I got used to that you need coalitions if you're actually going to get stuff done. You know, and then there are various ways you can try to do it, but you have to have working partners. You can't just do it from your own kind of starting point. Numbers really count. And if you're going to actually get stuff done, it can't just be this month. You want that coalition to stay together and to keep working together. And like around clean elections, we had a coalition which was public health people, it was labor, it was environmental people, it was democracy reform. There were all those groups that were working together. And for me, it was like a learning experience on how we need coalitions, but we need coalitions that aren't just like overnight coalitions. They're here for the long haul because these battles don't end, even if you get your referendum passed, which we did with clean elections. We passed our referendum and then it was repealed by the Democrats on a voice vote in committee in the legislature. You know, so it was just like a demonstration that your coalitions cannot be just for the moment. They really have to be for the long haul. And that's when I began to think, oh, so maybe that's what political parties are about. They're about coalitions that cohere over time and over geography, you know, so that they stay together and you can build. And that's when you start to get somewhere, you know. But if you haven't come up through that, you know, if you're more an academic and you're talking about ideals and visions and stuff like that, it's not the same as being in the fray and being kind of in the trenches where you got to build these coalitions in order to get stuff done, in order to make a material difference in people's lives.
So it kind of sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it kind of sounds like he couldn't be himself.
That was my concern. Yeah. And in order to be himself, maybe, you know, I have no doubt it's easier to be yourself if you're an independent. And, you know, and I think he was just, yeah, I can't speak for him, but, you know, that was like my perception that Cornel West needs to be Cornel West and not worrying about party dynamics. And, you know, he kind of said as much in one of his statements too. You know, he wanted to deal directly with the people, not with party dynamics. So, you know, there's an upside of that and there's a downside of that. The upside is you can be more yourself, but the downside is that you don't have a bigger team, especially on ballot access. And that's where I fear, you know, this is going to be a really tough move for him. But, you know, I really value his voice in this race. And I think he's done a huge, favor, delivered a huge benefit to the Green Party by being with us for some months and just having this working relationship, inserting his voice into the race. In a way, he's been testing the water. And, you know, I think the reception has been really great. I mean, he's had all kinds of challenges for coming into the race sort of late and without prior planning and all that. And I think Peter Dow has really been doing some very good work with the campaign. And had he had a manager like that at the outset, it would have been a whole different ballgame. But I think he's gotten, you know, much more specific. I think he's gone further to the left, gotten much more concrete about the agenda, at least from what's up on the website now. You know, I think this is moving stuff in the right direction for him. Yeah. That's really great.
Eric, can you pull up the website, the new website, please? Because, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, because I noticed this website is very different when I look at the platform now. I feel like it's more left, more like to the left. I feel like it's more detailed. Yep. And I'm kind of curious, is it is that something, when I pull up this platform here for people, is this something that he could have been able to do through the Green Party, or are some of these issues on the platform a no-go for the Green Party?
Oh, no, he absolutely could have, but he did not have the support. He did not, from my perspective. Now, you may hear differently from him, but from what I saw, the campaign was not, you can't have an organized campaign without a campaign manager. And otherwise, you just keep going in circles and no one is really calling the shots. And I think Peter Dow has done a really great job of whipping this campaign into a real organization. They still have a long way to go, but you can, what you see reflected in the website now is a much more coherent game plan.
Yeah, so I just want to show people, and we'll go over this tomorrow night, more detail when Dr. West is here, but this is a big difference from what I've seen before in a positive way. There's a whole section here about economic justice, which is the first thing that's mentioned. One of the things that really stood out to me, national $27 minimum wage with special considerations for specific geographies where $27 an hour would not be enough. I'm just naming off a couple of things. We're not going to go through the whole thing. National Jobs Program is another one. End to Wall Street mass real estate holdings and marketization of human rights. Another one that really stood out to me, which told me he's been listening to some of the things that we said. Establish federal public banking institutions to fund public infrastructure and green reconstruction. This is something that we've been heavily pushing, at least over on this show. We've been heavily pushing about the importance of public banking. Then he has a section for worker justice here, which again, it's very detailed. Environmental justice. He also has health justice, and this is important. Go beyond Medicare for all towards true health justice. I think that's what a lot of us have been saying. At this point, we need something a little bit further than Medicare for all. He has a whole section on racial justice, which is also important. Transformative justice, protect free speech, enforce whistleblower protections, and stop the prosecution of those who expose government corruption. And then there's also education justice, and LGBTQIA plus justice, gun violence justice, immigration justice, and global justice. Dismantle the U.S. empire, slash the bloated military budget, disband NATO. Like, these are things I think a lot of us do agree with. So that was something I did notice, like, wow, like I do think the platform is better now. Like, just being honest.
There was no platform before. There was none. And we had several of us within the campaign were advocating for this for a long time. We did not have a campaign manager who could really pull all the pieces together and clarify that this is what needed to happen. We were not able to move forward on platform, on events, on press. Really, the campaigns will always be a mush without a campaign manager and without the tools to do this stuff. And there's that, what you saw up there, that is kind of a standard Green Party platform. There's nothing there that hasn't been in our campaigns routinely. And this should have happened from the beginning. And there are all kinds of reasons why it couldn't happen. But basically without a campaign manager to say, here's what we're doing, here's who is doing it. Yeah, I mean,
you have to have someone driving.
It was not organized. The campaign was not organized. There's no way it could be organized. And there were those of us who were screaming for a campaign manager for months. And the Wests needed to feel very comfortable with the person that they hired. Now, I'm not sure exactly how they got comfortable with Peter Dow because they weren't talking with him. Maybe it was process of elimination. I have no idea. I wasn't party to it. So, you know, I'm just really glad for him that it's happened. I don't think, you know, I think it would have been great if Dr. West felt like he didn't have to go independent at this point. It's unfortunate because now he's got a great platform, but he'll have a very hard time getting on the ballot.
Why not just let him, you know, I mean, if it cost, you a candidate who was probably one of the most popular candidates from the Green Party? Why not just, push back on party leadership and say, let Cornel West be himself?
Oh, absolutely. If we had had a clue that it was going on, but there really wasn't much said about it. So there was no dialogue about this. I didn't hear about it until it was after the fact. So,
Okay. Jill,
unfortunately, I think those decisions just got made internally.
How have some people been receptive to, or have, in reference to Dr. West's campaign in the Green Party? It's apparent to me there have been a couple of Green Party members who have gone on to left independent media shows, and they have actually been attacking Dr. West's campaign. The moment he stepped in to the Green Party, they've been very vocal about this, and they've actually been trying to get other people. Now, I do know there are a couple other people that are running as well. One of them is coming on, I think next week on the show to run against Cornel West. And they were very outspoken about the fact that they did not want Cornel West running through the Green Party, particularly because of his past connection with the People's Party and being a part of on the board or advisory board of the People's Party. So this is like the whole People's Party stuff that carried over into the Green Party. And it was really disturbing to me to see that there were Green Party members who were actively working against Dr. West's campaign on multiple platforms on left independent media. And I have to ask, did you experience any type of pushback, so to speak, from members of the Green Party that were not happy about this run with Dr. West?
Well, I can say that during my own run, I had plenty of pushback from members of the party. This is just how it works. It is a nominating process. You have to compete in a primary, and you're going to have opponents. And that's just kind of how the democratic process works. You have opponents, and they try to, stop you in any way that they can. They don't represent the party. They're just talking for themselves, and there's going to be a lot of chatter out there. And, it's like the general election. There are going to be candidates who are really contesting, and that happens. The Green Party has a primary, and we do not have a coronation. We have a nomination, and you have to compete. So I don't regard that as a problem. You're going to have some people with really ridiculous, crazy ideas, and best not to pay them any attention. If they don't give them a platform, if you think that they're nuts. And I don't see that as having really hurt Dr. West. I don't see him as bothered by, occasional opponents. I don't think you have to protect your candidate from criticism and all that. I think that's just part of the process, and that's a healthy democracy. And that was part of my race for sure. All my races, there were always people who kind of came out of the woodwork and would come out every election. Suddenly we would have these presidential candidates or self-described presidential candidates who had zero credibility in the party, zero experience. And, they would come out and try to, promote their own candidacy and tear yours down. And that's just the way it goes. And there's very little that you have to do to deal with them. Like there may be one debate or something, but now the party they have higher standards for you can't become a recognized candidate until you have a whole lot of people who sign your petition. You have to show that you're capable of doing media. You have to have some media skills, website. There's just a number of criteria that you have to pass. You have to check off the boxes in order to become a candidate. And then once you have recognized candidates, then there might be 2 debates, something like that. So it's not a humongous big deal. It's a totally reasonable process. And I don't think that's the problem. And I just want to say that Dr. West is going to remain in the race. He's made a decision here, which many of us do not think is strategic. And unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to really have dialogue before that. And that's too bad. but that's Dr. West's prerogative. And if that's the route that he wants to pursue for now, he has to do that. We'll have the benefit of still having his voice in the race, but I think we're going to have to do the work of providing an alternative platform to ensure that this agenda is carried loud and strong by the Green Party in hopefully a 50-state campaign and into the general election. So the fight is not over. And, Dr. West has been a part of many presidential races. I hope he will continue to be in whatever form, whether as a candidate or as a spokesperson. I hope that he's going to continue to be heard loud and strong, and that he will find the best venue for his voice to be the most powerful that it can be for him.
What's next for the Green Party in reference to moving forward? I know I've interviewed Jasmine Sherman. She came on at that time. She was running as an independent. From what I understand, she's a part of the Green Party now. And I believe Davi should be coming on next week. What is next for the Green Party? Because I do want people to understand that there are multiple people. It wasn't just Dr. West that was running with the Green Party.
And the Green Party nominations are not over either. In fact, I don't think there are any officially recognized candidates yet. So the process is still open, and some of us are, looking around and talking to other candidates. And now that there's a big gap to be filled, I'm hoping that we can get an experienced candidate or maybe two into contention here so that we can maintain the momentum and, in fact, build it even stronger, because we do have a very big, diverse team over many states, and we need a candidate who can engage with that process and, really power it up. And that's what many Greens are interested in doing right now. And so we're just beginning to have these conversations about what experienced candidates can step up to the plate here. Because, I think we saw that in this race. There is so much hunger right now, for a workers' peace, climate, democracy candidate. We need that badly, and people really get, like Joe Biden just resumed student debt at a time when 60% more than that are already, living paycheck to paycheck, and 44 million young people are locked into student debt, living paycheck to paycheck for the most part. And now they got to come up with an extra $500 a month or something. I mean, what is this going to do to people? This is just madness. And 24 million people potentially just got laid off of Medicaid, because the COVID extension was needlessly terminated.
Yep.
Just take your pick. 40% of renters are up to their eyeballs in rent, just trying to keep a roof over their head. They're spending 30% of their income, which is staggering, because how do you begin to pay for food and transportation if 30% of your income already is going to rent? And that's 40% of renters right there off the board, and rent support and eviction moratoriums and things like that have basically just gone by the wayside. Count them off. This was the hottest year on record, and we have droughts and horrific storms and water systems that are failing. And we're sending $140 billion to Ukraine, to inflame a war that is already bringing us to the brink of a nuclear catastrophe. And now we're accelerating that war and spreading it over, into China and Taiwan. It's like, this is just effing unbelievable. We really need a party for working people and for peace and for the planet. People are exploding, and we need to be in contention. And people are hungry for this. And we know from the numbers that 50% of people want, 62% of people want an independent party, and twice as many people identify as independent as do Democrat or Republican. So the rebellion is here. The rebellion is here, and it needs to be heard in this election, loud and clear, all the way through. And there's an uprising, and it's in full swing right now, and it needs to get even stronger in this election. And that's what the Greens, have a responsibility to carry into this election, because we are the one party that can bring this into the presidential debate, and we have to do that.
I think what people have to understand, what's very different this time around versus like when Jill ran, there is no Democrat primary debate this time around. So Marianne is still running through the Democratic Party, but just something to keep in mind. This is not going to be like we go into next year and we're going to see Democrat primary debates. You'll see the GOP ones, which we have already been covering, but you're not going to see a Democrat primary debate, which means that more attention is going to be on these independent and third party candidates. If you think you're hearing a lot about RFK now, wait till next year. If you think you're hearing a lot about Cornel West now, wait till next year. And Dr. Shiva is also running, as an independent as well. So I think that this is the time that I think a lot of people were waiting for to really like shake up or disrupt, this duopoly, because Joe Biden is not doing a good job. Last poll I saw showed Trump beating Joe Biden. Trump's way ahead of every candidate that's running a part of the GOP primary. So it's obvious right now, it looks like it's going to be Biden and Trump again, a rematch. And then a lot of people are just unsatisfied with the two-party system and they want to support third-party independent candidates. That's why this is so incredibly important, because this could be that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when they tell us as third parties or independents that we're spoilers, it's really it's really important to point out to them that this spoiling, you need to go back to 2010, because that's when they lost 1,000 seats in the state legislatures. They lost 64 seats in the U.S. House. They lost 12 in the Senate and 13 governorships. Where were the third parties to blame that spoiling on, right?
Yeah.
That was they spoil it. The Democrats are spoiling this for themselves by abandoning working people who have in turn abandoned them. That's what's going on here. That's the answer to the spoiler problem. This is not about suppressing democracy and suppressing candidates who actually have the solutions to these problems that the duopoly has created. So, people just need to tune out this spoiler smears and insanity. That's just the defense of the power holders who are trying to hold their competition at bay. That's all that's about. It's really, the system is really spoiled and it's going over the cliff right now. And if we don't stand up to fight back, who else is going to do it? It's like Frederick Douglass is saying that power concedes nothing without a demand, never has, never will. We are that demand. Without us, there is no demand. So there is no shame here. Just forget the voter blaming and shaming. This is really about voters stepping up to demand that we have a future we can survive in. And if we don't demand it, we're not going to get it. And we're headed over the waterfall right now. So, clock is ticking, time to stand up and, go to the Green Party ballot access page, in fact, and show some love, and you can help ensure that this process of 50 state ballot drive continues. And that's how we're going to do it. And sign up and volunteer, and let's do what this time, our historic moment really demands that we do now.
Yeah, two more things, Jill. Roger Meadows, thank you for this, said, Doc, he means Dr. Stein. I think the Greens should consider prioritizing CBIs. He's talking about ballot initiatives, preferably as amendments over what politicians you will run to get the policies that you want. Now, Jill, we're both in Massachusetts. We're very familiar with ballot initiatives and how it's worked for people in this state. This is something that Roger has been pushing very heavily. Like, he was wondering if there could be some type of collaboration with the Green Party or any third party, actually pushing for those ballot initiatives to get some of those things accomplished like we have in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's been very much, I think, a part of green priorities is to push ballot initiatives, especially like around ranked choice voting or getting money out of politics. There's just really critical stuff that will never move through legislatures as we now know them. So absolutely, Roger. Yeah, that's just a fundamental part of a democracy agenda for sure.
And Jill, one more question. Could you please answer this question for everyone? Because I've said this before, but people continue to ask. Any plans for you to run for president or any political office in the near future?
Yes. Now, which office? I don't know, but this is a conversation that's now happening in great intensity. And I think one of the things coming out of Cornell's legacy here is how important this race is and how much people really want. People are in rebellion now. There's just a full-scale rebellion taking place. And I was actually a little, sort of not enthusiastic about a presidential run and thought it made a lot more sense for us to just pause that strategy because it tends to be so all-consuming and instead focus. And I was very interested in a congressional race myself. And then I got swept up because I thought, whoa, this is so exciting for Dr. West to be running as a Green. And so I spent like 4 months on that. And I'm really glad that I did. And I greatly value every minute of it and greatly value everything he's bringing to the race. But now it's clear that we need a Green to run this. And I would not have pushed this and promoted it had Cornell not been here. And now that he's vacated, now the question is, now what? And I think we can't just back off now. I don't think we can back off because we've seen how absolutely critical this is. So I'd say stay tuned and maybe we'll talk again in a month and see what's going on then.
Oh, snap. So I stand corrected. I stand corrected because I told people, I said, Jill said she can't run. She's busy. She got other stuff going on, but I stand corrected. So we'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a whole new ballgame right now. And a lot of conversations taking place. So I just say, be a part of that conversation and let's see where it goes.
All right. Well, Dr. Jill Stein, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, Sabby. Thank you. Hold the fort. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye. Well, I was not expecting to hear that. So that's interesting news, guys. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll hear some news, right? All right, guys. So if you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button for me. And we got more news that we're going to discuss tonight. And of course, we are going to do call in tonight. I'm pretty sure you guys figured that we would. But thank you so much. That helps me out with the algorithm there. What's that, Zoya? Zoya said, you were right, Sabby. Things changed. Yeah, things can change. I'm telling you guys, I'm going to say it one more time. 2024 is going to be wild. Pass that on. I should put that on like a little t-shirt too. 2024 is going to be wild. Then you can't wear it after 2024 probably. What's up, automatic selector? So does this mean Kennedy is going to run with the Green Party? Oh, I'm so confused. I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be running that party. Shout out to JB Font says, hello, everyone. Big news today. I hope you're all well. Forehead kisses. Shout out to Roger for the super chat. Spit fire Sabby. Saul says, I'm halfway through Cornell on Tim Black's show, and it sounds like he's going to run a more Black-focused campaign. Like the main complaint is that Bernie's wasn't. And I talked about that earlier on RBN today about how Bernie's campaign left some things out that I thought should have been included. Thank you for that, Saul. Thank you for the super chat, Justin. Peter may have left the Dems, but he clearly doesn't understand ballot access. Not sure if Peter is doing this intentionally or unknowingly, but this will make it unlikely Cornel West will be on your ballot. And thank you for this as well. It cost $450K to get Jill on the ballot in 45 states in 2016. It will cost close to $2 million to get Cornell on the ballot in California alone 400,000 signatures. Such bad strategy for him to run independent. Thank you, Roger. Again, guys, Cornel West will be here tomorrow night. Tomorrow, I'm going live at 5 p.m. Eastern to accommodate Dr. West. So no show in the evening. I'll be going live at 5, not at 8 p.m. And I already read that one, Roger. And thank you for this as well, Justin. In my opinion, this is strategically a terrible idea. I don't see Cornell getting on the ballot in more than 20 states. Without California and Texas ballot access, that won't give him a real shot at winning. Not good. Well, we'll discuss tomorrow with him. Thank you, Roger. Prioritizing running politicians over CBI isn't it. Thank you, Historic Teachings. West running independent helps Biden. He's only doing this because RFK Jr. stepped out of the Dem race. Well, apparently not, according to Jill. West is pathetic and might as well run as a Dem. Interesting. Thank you, Kent. A serious apology. Green Party has irreplaceable assets West will lose out on, never catch up. Governing will be really annoying too. Thank you, Cassie, for the super sticker. What's up with that picture, Cassie? What's up with that? Thank you, Ruthless Criticism. Is there a mechanism for the Green Party to endorse an independent candidate instead of putting up their own nominee? I think, if I remember correctly, I think the Green Party has to have their own nominee. They still have to have someone run through the Green Party. And thank you, Justin, for this. Cornell could have had the same platform as a Green. Candidates always have their own unique platform that generally aligns with the Green Party. Thank you as well. Thank you, Wired TARDIS. Unsure how serious West run is. Big disappointment. I'm adding mint to the end of that. Thank you, DC. Reminder, you always write in Vermin Supreme. Remember that guy. Thank you, Scott. I wish Dr. West consulted RBN and Dr. Stein, etc., about hiring Peter Dow, as well as going independent, wrestled the idea publicly. Ballot access means West is taking a ton of extra work getting on the ballots. So I would just want to go on the record and say, don't consult me. I do not have experience working with campaigns, just FYI. Thank you, Kent. Will the West campaign repay the Green parties back for their investments, signature gathering, etc.? 80K to Arizona party. I don't know. Kent. Thank you, James. I supported Jill Stein in 2016 as a grassroots organizer and would absolutely again in 2024. Astro said, did she just announce a did she just announce a presidential bid? She said, stay tuned. Stay tuned. And thank you, Cool Blue. The success or failure of an election campaign by and for a candidate begins and ends with that candidate. Thank you, Cool Blue. Well, we'll talk a lot about this tonight on Call In, guys. I'll take the comment on Rockfin and then we'll get into the other stories. Thank you, Roger. Let's never forget the politically astute regardless of disagreements. No matter how highly we like to think of ourselves, when it comes to elections, any elections, we don't elect the candidates. The majority of the electorate who is not politically astute does. I ask normal people, do they even know who West is first? They say no. They know who RFK is, but say no when I ask, do they know he's running? Interesting. And thank you for this tip, Hemp Card. Open Secrets lists the donations to the Green Party. Is Jill Stein able to debate Diane Sayre? Oh, I was supposed to ask her about that. Thanks for the reminder. I wonder if this money and time could have started a lot of those farms that can grow 1 million pounds of a few acres like that guy in Milwaukee does, or like Willie Nelson's biodiesel car rental. If we can get those to grow it, could dent their pockets like bus boycotts or salt marches that worked. Thank you for that, Hemp Car in the house. And I also want to make sure I do shout out all of you that are Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're doing the damn thing around here. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, there's Sabinators, Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabbies. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Lebu, Paranou, and Vicious E. Thank you so much. Based. All right. We are moving on to our other stories. I want to go ahead and share that thumbnail so you can see what else we're going to discuss tonight. Should be a meaty show tonight. Kind of like a cheesesteak. All right, so tonight we're discussing, of course, Jill Stein was just here to talk about Cornel West's announcement today. Dr. West, again, will be here tomorrow. We're also going to discuss Kevin McCarthy is gone. Gone. We're also discussing Nina Turner's new gig, this new announcement, and I'm going to tell you how this kind of intersects with something that we already have, which is Workers Strike Back. So we're going to talk about Nina Turner's announcement. Also, we're discussing the largest healthcare strike in history, that is Kaiser Permanente. We're going to talk about them tonight. And of course, those Wisconsin ballot wins. So let's go ahead and get into it with this Kevin McCarthy story. I was in DC when I was watching all this play out, and I could not wait to discuss this story, okay? Because it brings back Force the Vote all over again. So for those of you who are probably aware now, Kevin McCarthy has indeed been ousted as Speaker of the House. This, of course, was led by Matt Gaetz. He really did not like the fact that Kevin McCarthy was willing to bend to the Democratic Party and the rest of the Republican congressmen and women as well in reference to that Ukraine funding. So that's something that Matt Gaetz has heavily pushed back against. He does not think we need to give more money to Ukraine, and Kevin McCarthy was willing to bend on that. Now, we all need to remember, going back to the Speaker nomination, Matt Gaetz did not want Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker. Remember, there were those several like votes. They voted over and over again. I think this process lasts for about a week. They were essentially, Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus were forcing the vote against Kevin McCarthy, which is exactly what we asked the squad to do in reference to Nancy Pelosi. Eventually, they ended up going with McCarthy and getting some concessions in return. But apparently, Matt Gaetz didn't take his eye off the ball, because he basically said, look, Kev, you slip up once and I'm going to make sure you're out. And now Kevin McCarthy is gone. Gone, gone, gone. In the words of NSYNC, gone, gone. Let's get into it.
And that breaking news, Matt Gaetz, the Republican congressman, has filed that motion to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. The first time that this has happened in more than 100 years. Let's listen to Matt Gaetz speaking to reporters right now.
And as I said in my remarks on the floor earlier today, regardless of how you feel about Ukraine money or border money, these two things should not be lumped together. They deserve their own dignity and their own vote. And the people are tired of seeing the ways of Washington that jam everything together in order to really frustrate actual legislators.
If you succeed, McCarthy's almost certainly going to put himself up as a candidate for Speaker again. And that may mean there's no one who can get 218 votes. Are you prepared to go through that possibility with no one getting 218 votes?
Well, I would think that if it took Kevin McCarthy 15 rounds to become Speaker, and after 8 months of a failed speakership, and after a successful removal vote, as your hypothesis would portend, that he would take a hint.
Do you have someone?
This guy gives zero fucks, okay? This is what we wanted Jamal Bowman, AOC, this is what we wanted them to do. Matt Gaetz is not caving to any kind of pressure. Have you noticed this? How he's just like, no, he's standing firm and solid on what he believes. And it's just too bad that we didn't see this behavior come from the squad. They should have been leading that fight, particularly a strategy that's in the DSA handbook that they could have just easily followed. But now they let the Republicans force a vote. And they've shown that it actually can work. But Matt Gaetz does not care. He doesn't care if he's going to be criticized because of it. He's still standing firm on what he believes. That is exactly what the squad was supposed to do. Let's continue.
Any Democrats about this? If it were serious, you'd be trying to convince them.
Look, I have made no deal with Democrats because I believe that Democrats should vote against Kevin McCarthy for free. It's Kevin McCarthy who's out there offering deals to Democrats. So if there's a deal made with Democrats, the only deal is to make one with McCarthy, because I'm not offering anything and won't offer anything. And by the way, if the Democrats want to own Kevin McCarthy, they can have it. Because one thing I'm at peace with is when we stand here a week from now, I won't own Kevin McCarthy anymore. He won't belong to me. So if the Democrats want to adopt him, they can adopt him.
Look at how he just tossed Kevin McCarthy to the side like that. He said if the Democratic Party wants to have him, they can have him. Wouldn't you have loved to see somebody say this in reference to Nancy Pelosi? You know what? You guys like Pelosi so much. Why don't you just have her? Wouldn't you have loved to see someone say that? Take her away. We don't want her. Couldn't do that. They were too weak.
If you're successful, who would be your alternative? Who would you be putting up there if you're successful?
Look, our number 2 is Steve Scalise. I think very highly of Steve Scalise. I would vote for Steve Scalise. I would probably vote for at least 100 Republicans in our caucus and maybe 100 other Americans out there who wouldn't necessarily need to be a member of the body to be considered for the speakership. But I am not going to pass over Steve Scalise just because he has blood cancer and is going through treatment.
Damn. Like, it just to say the things that he just said.
What would you say to members who have worked so hard to try and get these appropriation bills through? That's finally happening. Now they say they don't want to be distracted from that. What do you say to those members who don't want to vote against McCarthy for that reason?
Well, mostly I would say you're welcome, because we weren't endeavoring on the appropriations process earnestly until we held a political gun to the speaker's head last week. We left for a 6-week vacation, and we'd only passed one of our appropriations bills, the veterans bill. If Kevin McCarthy was serious about appropriations, we'd have been here all of July, we would have been here in August, and we would have been doing the people's work, passing their budget. The American people are tired of Washington, D.C. not having a budget, running $2 trillion annual deficits, sitting atop a $33 trillion debt. And if this country's going down, I'm going down fighting.
You know, I wouldn't say the American people are, tired of the government not having a budget. I think the American people are tired of the government using the money from the budget to help out other people besides the people in this country. I think that's where a lot of Americans are. Like, you keep giving money to Ukraine, but you can't help people out here, or they won't. They're not willing to help out people here. I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. But the boldness of Matt Gaetz to just say what he just said and not care if he loses his seat. Like, I remember when AOC was running and how bold she sounded, and the way that Cori Bush sounded so bold. And when AOC first got in, she was, protesting outside Nancy Pelosi's office. I remember all that stuff in the beginning, and then they just, became just quiet little mouse. And they fell in line. Imagine if they spoke this way. Imagine if they came in with that kind of fire and said, well, if Nancy Pelosi doesn't want this, then it is what it is. But I don't have to vote for it, and I'm not going to. Imagine if they did that.
I mean, it's happening now, right? Y'all were supposed to be back home in your districts. That hasn't happened. There are appropriation bills on the calendar. I know it might have taken a while to get here, but you're here. And so what do you say to your colleagues who say we can't support this because we want to get this done? We want to get the government funded.
Well, I would suggest if we were real serious about that process, we wouldn't be having 4-day work weeks. I mean, we started votes tonight at 6:30 p.m. on a Monday. Most Americans don't start work at 6:30 p.m. on a Monday and end a few hours later, right?
I disagree with that. See, he's talking about people that work like a 9 to 5, right? See, again, this goes back to them being in that DC bubble and a class issue. Because see, for a lot of the people that are congressmen and that are senators, like for them, like the people that they know, they do have like that typical 9 to 5 job, right? And some people work in government have a 4-day work week. But what about all the people that work third shift? And that includes nurses too, by the way. What about the people that work at night? Like when I waited tables, I worked in the evening. So there's still that disconnect here. Let's continue.
So I don't believe that the level of effort that you're seeing out of the Congress this week is reflective of the momentum that we had built previously.
But you're going to need Democrats. You're going to need Democrats to vote with you to oust McCarthy. And you're criticizing McCarthy for having to potentially need Democrats to keep him in the job. I mean, aren't you pretty much doing the exact same thing here?
Mono, the yellow brick road of working with Democrats has been paved constructed, engineered, and architected by Kevin McCarthy. Look no further than the debt limit deal, a deal he passed with Democrats. Look no further than the last continuing resolution, which he passed with Democrats. And by the way, if he's able to stay in power, it will be him working for the Democrats, continuing to do their bidding. So this is a revealing exercise, and I think it'll show the country who's really in
Just
charge.
to follow up on that, though, most Republicans still do support McCarthy. So why bring this up if you don't have the support of most of your conference?
Well,
that question right there, most Republicans still support Kevin McCarthy. So what she's basically saying is you should go along with party majority. No, if you're trying to act the way the Tea Party did, if you're trying to act the way the squad was supposed to, and you have that narrow majority, which is exactly what they have here, part of the Freedom Caucus, you use that to your advantage.
he doesn't have my support anymore, and he doesn't have the support of a requisite number of Republicans to continue as the Republican speaker. Now, he may continue as the House Speaker, and he may continue as a Speaker of the Democrats and some sort of uniparty coalition, but he is not going to be a Speaker in power as a consequence of Republican votes based on the number of people who are going to be with me.
Is this like a personal disagreement you have with McCarthy, or is this solely just on...
You know, it's so funny that I come out here, and I've been doing this for a great number of days with all of you, and I lay out in Technicolor the specific areas of breach of the agreement: breaching the 72-hour rule, breaching the suspension rule, blowing past the top lines, not passing single subject spending bills. And yet the McCarthy operation continues to try to make this some sort of personal beef. No one seems to be real eager in engaging me on the substance of my argument, which is that we need single subject spending bills. We need to return to pre-COVID spending. But some people try to make every policy disagreement personal because they are so personally embarrassed from their own failures. And so this has nothing to do with a personality. This has to do with breach of an agreement. I laid that breach out weeks ago. I stood on the floor. You all covered it. And I said, these are the areas of breach. They have to be rectified. Instead of getting any sincere effort to resolve that, you know, we heard the speaker's profanity and his bluster, and that's simply not strong leadership.
So this is about holding people accountable, right? So when he's talking about that breach, remember, let's all remember here that when they did decide to vote for Kevin McCarthy, remember that came with some concessions. And one of the things that Matt Gaetz specifically had mentioned that I remember was the single subject bills. A single subject bill actually would be a good thing if you think about how some people have voted along with bills because it had one good thing in it. Like Bernie Sanders said he voted along for Joe Biden's crime bill because it had the protection against the violence against women. So the single subject bills actually is a good thing. Now, in reference to who becomes speaker now, there seems to be this misconception that you actually have to be a member of Congress to become Speaker of the House. Turns out you actually don't. And some people have actually hinted towards the fact that they would actually prefer for Donald Trump to be Speaker of the House. That message got back to Donald Trump. And now this apparently is happening. Just in, Trump is considering a visit to Capitol next week where he is open to pitching himself as a speaker candidate. That is coming from Politico. I kid you not. This can actually happen. There's no rule. See, this is the thing, guys. There's no rule against that. You could be speaker. This is just kind of how it works. So I thought that was a little entertaining, right? But of course, when we talk about this, one of the things that is brought up, this force the vote issue, the fact that Kevin McCarthy has been ousted, has been the squad members in reference to them leveraging and using their power. This clip here from Case Study QB, which I think is important, this talks about how the progressives actually just never really use their power. They admit this openly on MSNBC in reference to the discussion about Kevin McCarthy being ousted as speaker.
I think Sahil had the tweet of the day, actually, where he tweeted and he underscored that Speaker Nancy Pelosi, when she was speaker, had the exact same very slim margin that Kevin McCarthy did. And for all the hemming and hawing that a number of progressives did do privately, nothing like this ever happened while she was Speaker of the House.
That point right there by Simone Sanders, all that does again is show how pathetic the squad has been. They did have that narrow majority. There was this push to force the vote, and they chose not to. right? So this is MSNBC, and Simone Sanders is just making my case for me. This is MSNBC telling you that the progressives, the squad members in the House, they are weak. They didn't use their leverage in reference to any type of concessions. They did not assert their power. So this isn't a gotcha, Simone. Like saying that, well, yeah, this thing that's happening with Kevin McCarthy, even when it happened with Nancy Pelosi, they had the same type of majority, and even the squad members didn't choose to do that. That's not good, Simone. That's really not good. That's actually bad. You're just actually showing that those squad members, that they went along with Democratic Party leadership instead of doing the assignment that was given to them by Justice Democrats, which is to have a hostile takeover the Democratic Party. Let me let this finish.
And can one make, we hear all the time the far right and the far left, but even the most progressive members of Congress, Simone, you can't point to anything that they're simply trying to blow up the system, cause chaos, bedlam, or paralysis, which is exactly where the House is right now.
I think Sahil had the tweet.
You see how it works? They were just called out, basically called out. They're not doing anything. They're not bringing the ruckus like they said they would do. Now, I want to take you back to a moment for Force the Vote, where some people tend to forget, like, who actually supported it, right? Like, we all know Jimmy did. We know Bree did. Bree's been very vocal about this. But there were other people who supported it, too, and said that this is the way to leverage power. Now, shout out to neoliberal tears for doing the damn thing, always catching these clips. This is a moment when Crystal Ball actually supported and made the need for Force the Vote. Just a reminder, folks.
Now, there are only two advantages that the left actually has today. One is that the left's economic positions on everything from healthcare, stimulus, wages, and unions are extremely popular. And two, the left has a loud base online and a growing new media ecosystem. So ideas like Force the Vote that combine online pressure with exposing that yawning gap between every establishment figure in Washington and what people actually want, those are exactly the sorts of opportunities that we should be pushing for and should be exploiting. But even beyond this specific idea, the one area where the left is actually in decent shape is online. So why in the world would you unilaterally disarm in that area? Think about it. The bedrock of Sanders' campaign was online, which is exactly the reason that the establishment and their media allies went to such great lengths to turn this strength into a weakness with their whole concocted narrative about toxic Bernie bros. Similarly, AOC and the squad's power doesn't come from the offices that they hold or the committees that they sit on. It comes from the social media armies that they direct. If they aren't interested in leveraging those tools, then they're just ordinary members of Congress who don't actually deserve any more attention than anyone else. The outright dismissal, too, of media as a political force is really weird. Fox.
Notice what she said there. If they don't use this type of power they have, they're just ordinary members of Congress. And that's what we have now.
News was explicitly started as a tool for supporting right-wing politics. And by the way, it's been extraordinarily effective. MSNBC basically determined the Democratic nominee this cycle and sets the agenda for the entire Democratic Party. I think it rather overstates things to imagine that the left has recreated anything like these media powerhouses. But to dismiss the entire project of building a left media ecosystem is incredibly counterproductive. Sure, some actors in the space are better than others. But I'm old enough to remember when there was a lot of panic and hand-wringing about how the right was too dominant online and the kids were doomed to be reactionaries.
So that's just a reminder there. Thank you for that, neoliberal tears, about the people who did support this at that point in time, right? So here's another one from neoliberal tears. Thank you so much for this. Now, this was from Rising recently, where Bree was talking about Force the Vote in reference to the Kevin McCarthy ousting as well, just to go to show you that Force the Vote does actually work. This would have worked. And you have to think about where we would be today as a movement, so to speak, if they would have done what Matt Gaetz did in reference to Kevin McCarthy.
Will you continue voting to fund Ukraine as the number one issue of who is leading the House of Representatives is a wild, wild shift.
And that's why Force the Vote works, because it forces everyone in Congress, at least anyone who wants a leadership position or wants to have a say, to be very clear on the record how they feel about an issue that's a high priority to the American people. It's literally why Force the Vote works. All right.
That part right there. That's very important. We would have been able to get all of those Congress members on record in reference to if they supported Medicare for all or not, if they were willing to give the people health care during the middle of a pandemic. And so people say, well, it wouldn't pass, That's not the point. The point was to get those people on record. And then what do? You primary challenge those people. And again, like I said, if Nancy Pelosi didn't want to do it, then you don't vote for her as speaker. That's how you use that narrow majority that you have. That's how you use that leverage. And that's how you get some key concessions, not just for your political career, but for the American people. That was a huge mistake on the left for them not to go forward with that. It was a huge mistake for people like TYT and the Majority Report to back out of that. That was a terrible idea. And we could be further along now. But some people still so in their egos that they still don't want to admit it even today.
Why force the vote works. All right, stick around. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.
Will you continue?
So, just a reminder where we could be today. And it could have been Nancy Pelosi was like, I'm not going to do this. Then Nancy will be gone. And we would just have to say, bye, Nancy. Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more. But the squad would have been using the leverage that they had. Now they don't have any leverage. But the Freedom Caucus does, and they're using it. So hit the road, Jack. So Kevin is gone. Gone. Just like that. Kevin hasn't even been speaker for a year yet. Shortest speakership on record? Maybe? No? I'll have to check. I'll have to look that up and see who's been the shortest in reference to speakership. Thank you for the super chat, ABCD. Yeah. I met some Greens campaigning this weekend for local races, and it was telling how when I brought up Dr. West, they got really uncomfortable. That's interesting. Thank you, Blue Moon Red Wine. The goal is to make 2024 as confusing as possible. Ravina, I got a Sabby mug in the mail today. Made me happy. Oh, thank you. Enjoy. Thank you, Cool Blue. Matt Gaetz, having orchestrated the ousting of Kevin McCarthy as U.S. Speaker, is the best political news of the week. Anti-force the vote faction, including the squad, are frauds. Thank you so much for that, Cool Blue. Speaking of someone from the progressive movement, Nina Turner has been hinting for a while that she has this announcement that she's going to make, right? So some people assumed that she was going to be running for office. I didn't think that she was. I figured the announcement was something else. And so far it appears I'm right. Now, I don't know for all of it, but so far it appears that I'm right. What was really kind of interesting to me, it seems as though Nina Turner has launched some type of worker project. And it seems very similar to an organization that I spoke at the launch for. I was at the launch for here in Boston. Nick spoke at the launch in Seattle. And that's Workers Strike Back. I'll let you hear the announcement for her, and then I'm going to have to tell you why this just seems weird to me, why you're doing the same thing that Workers Strike Back is already doing. I'm going to tell you what I think about this. So this was announced. We Are Somebody. That's the name of the organization. Today, we are proud to announce We Are Somebody, a bridge between those who support unions and the workers, putting their livelihoods online for better wages and working conditions. That is literally Workers Strike Back, which already exists. Let's get into it.
Everybody is somebody. Most people want the ability to afford housing, healthcare, provide for their family, and be able to take a vacation every now and then. While most corporations are seeing record profits, they aren't leading to record wages. Imagine that. CEO pay has skyrocketed over 1,000% since 1978. CEOs are paid 399 times as much as a typical worker. Workers deserve better. From the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. supporting sanitation workers in Memphis, to Fannie Lou Hamer's work for Black farmers in the South, to Asa Philip Randolph's work organizing the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and organizing the March on Washington, the fight for liberation has always been a fight for workers' rights. It is in this robust tradition that I am launching We Are Somebody, a capacity-building organization for the working class. Our first major initiative will be to put our full support behind the 21st century workers movement. We Are Somebody aims to serve as a bridge between those who support unions and workers and the workers who are putting their livelihoods on the line by withholding their labor and demanding better from their employers. Every worker is somebody. You are somebody. We are somebody. And if we are committed to putting a little extra on our ordinary, extraordinary things will happen for working class people in this nation. The cause is right, and the time is now. Help ensure that workers on the front lines are supported, protected, and funded.
So this is Workers Strike Back, which was announced in April. Now, there is something I want to show you, because if you go to the funding, let's put this up here. So if you click on the link, We Are Somebody, donate to We Are Somebody, and you can choose an amount, just like you can with Workers Strike Back. You can donate. Act Blue appears. So up here it says secureactblue.com. If we scroll down to the bottom, oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is really tiny for you. I'll make it bigger so you can see it. Bam. If we scroll down to the bottom, Act Blue Civics is a registered charitable organization formed to democratize charitable giving. All donations made through our website are contributions to the organization to which you selected to contribute. So this is through Act Blue Civics, but still, I think we all know what Act Blue is, right? So this gave some people a pause. So again, similar to Workers Strike Back, you donate to the cause to help out workers, and particularly to help out those who are on strike. But it feels like, to me, this is basically a Democrat Party version of Workers Strike Back. And I don't really understand the intention of splitting resources, because the thing is this: Workers Strike Back was announced in April. We already knew about it. Many of us, most of us, or at least RBN, we covered it, told you guys that this was launching. That was Shama and her organization in reference to, putting that together. And one of the things that I did notice is that apparently, for whatever reason, it says that they are partnering with Amazon. Now, that is also giving me pause. And it gives me pause because Workers Strike Back was also partnering with Amazon and Chris Smalls, and their first initiative was to unionize all of the Amazon warehouses across the country. So basically, this is like Nita Turner basically took what Shama Sawan already did and created a separate organization. Now you have people splitting resources when all the resources could have went to one organization and they could be working together. This doesn't make any sense to me. That does not make any sense. This also doesn't make any sense. Now, this young woman here, we are excited to have President Flying with Sarah's support. Sarah is a part of, let me show you. Sarah Nelson is the president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, right? So she's involved with unionizing in reference to flight attendants. You guys have probably seen her on other platforms before. But what I also want you to know is that there has been a rumor going around that Sarah Nelson is considering also running for office. So now you have somebody who may run for office, and if she does run, she will run as a Democrat. You have them attached to this organization that is supposed to be helping the workers. Again, essentially putting the connection of the workers right back into the Democratic Party, just like with the NLRB, when people like to use that as a talking point and they say, but the NLRB, That's another reason to tell people to vote for the Democratic Party. That's giving you an excuse to come out and support the Democratic Party. Look at what they did for the workers. So if this is true, that Sarah Nelson is going to run for office as a Democrat, and if she's supporting this, and I want to know what type of involvement she has with this organization, this should be a red flag to a lot of people. Now I'm going to go ahead and play her commentary here in reference to the organization, because I want you to hear what she said. I'm going to tell you what I think is really happening here.
My name is Sarah Nelson. I'm the president of the Association of Flight Attendants and a proud supporter of We Are Somebody, because everybody is somebody. And this is a capacity building organization that builds power for the working class that we need. When unions were strong and the working class was together and understood the spirit of solidarity is when we had shared prosperity in this country. It's when we built up the social norms of going to work for 40 hours a week. You could have the weekends off. You could have your nights at home with your family. You could take care of an entire family on one paycheck, one job. One job is no longer enough, not just for one person in a family. It's not enough if everyone's working in the family. We have to change that. And We Are Somebody is going to help people strike back with the funds that are needed to keep those strikes going one day longer, one day stronger than the corporate elite who has been squeezing too much out of us for way too long.
See, this is exactly the same thing as Workers Strike Back. The same thing.
We Are Somebody is about all of us, and we are proud to stand with We Are Somebody as it launches today. Think about contributing, think about getting involved, get out on the picket lines, and support the working class.
So you guys see what's happening, right? Now I want to show you a comparison, because I'm telling you, I'm not imagining this. You know, I've been at the Workers Strike Back meetings. I was there for the announcement. Now I want to show you, like, this is straight from Workers Strike Back. Let me put this up here. Now, again, this was Shama's thing. She announced in April. We are an independent movement organizing in our workplaces and on the streets against the bosses and their political servants, right? So if you click on About, no more sellouts. We need to strike back. Workers Strike Back is an independent rank and file campaign organizing in our workplaces and on the streets against the bosses and their political servants. You know, it's just, we take our inspiration from hundreds of thousands of workers fighting to unionize at Amazon, Starbucks, and workplaces everywhere. So that this is where this comes from. This is where this comes from. And so I'm sorry, we got to give credit where credit is due. And that credit goes to Shama Sawant. And I remember very, very much so that when Shama Sawant launched Workers Strike Back, that was also the same day that Marianne Williamson launched her campaign announcement. More people were talking about Marianne Williamson's campaign than we're talking about this organization here for the workers. And it seemed very interesting to me that people only now want to talk about organizations for the workers when it's someone from the Democratic Party that's a part of it. Someone like a Nina Turner, someone like a Sarah Nelson. Then they want to talk about it. Or it's just Joe Biden, the NLRB. Then they want to talk about it. But when Shama launched this organization, there were very few outlets on the left that actually covered this story, let alone interviewed Shama Sawant. And this is very telling, guys. And look, like I told you, I was not born last night. We see what's happening here. Remember, Shama Sawant told you, you start off with the worker movement, and then the goal is eventually to build Workers Strike Back up into a third-party movement. That is the end game. So now we have Democrats launching an organization, the same organization that Shama Sawant already has, and it's connected to the Democratic Party. Like, Shama Sawant was supposed to, did you know this? Shama Sawant was supposed to appear on TYT to talk about Workers Strike Back. Once they found out who Shama really was, that interview was shut down. So a lot of people didn't even hear about it. Look at this. In order to win real victories like $25 an hour, rent control, and a union in every workplace, we need working and young people across the country to get involved and organize in their workplaces, campuses, and communities. Check out the list below to see ways to get active in your area. And so people started chapters in different cities, similar to how we did our RBN chapters. People started chapters in different cities, just like they did with Socialist Alternative. And so to me, when I look at this organization from Nina Turner, this to me is basically a counter to the independent worker movement that Kshama Sawant and Socialist Alternative has started. Also, she talked about it on Breaking Points. I don't remember Kshama Sawant coming on to Breaking Points to talk about workers' strike back. So I hope you guys see what's happening here. Let's go ahead and get into part of this interview on Counterpoints.
Former state senator Nina Turner is launching a new organization called We Are Somebody that will be supporting striking workers around the world. She joins us just in a moment. I wanted to play a little clip from her launch video first.
Everybody is somebody. Most people want the ability to afford housing, healthcare, provide for their family, and be able to take a vacation every night.
We're skipping past that. It feels forced anyway.
Where you have a nonprofit out there to complement what workers are doing. It is indeed a capacity building organization for all workers, not just unionized workers, because we do understand that most workers in this country are not unionized, but to the extent that we can bring unionized and non-unionized workers together, we create a type of synergy that cannot be stopped. There is a need for this organization to both be a bridge for union and non-union workers, but also to be out there on the front lines to amplify, to help to fund and support these workers, to educate and to provide technical support where necessary. And what comes to mind for me is our first big venture, which is going to be with the one and only Christian Smalls, the president of the Amazon Labor Union, as you know.
See, you see that part right there? So the first thing that they're doing is going to be working with Christian Smalls, just like Christian Smalls worked with Workers Strike Back. Why? So explain this to me, guys. With Amazon, why would they split their resources? Again, like if you guys were already working with Workers Strike Back, why are you going to split up and say, okay, we're going to work with Nina Turner's organization as well? I'm really confused. Because when Workers Strike Back was announced, it was very clear. Kshama made it very, very clear. And she came onto this show to announce it. It was very clear that their first priority was to organize Amazon warehouses across the United States in collaboration with Chris Smalls. So what the fuck is happening here? And I'm all for labor power. And I'm all for like labor unionization and giving people, you know, benefits and rights in the workplace. I'm all for that. But we don't have a lot of resources on the left. We've complained about this before. We don't have a lot of money on the left. So why are we splitting resources for two different organizations? Why didn't Nina Turner just contact Kshama Sawant and say, hey, I'd love to work with this organization with you? Why? Is it because Kshama Sawant is not a Democrat? So you can't work with Kshama because she's not a Democrat, because she's very critical of the Democratic Party? Because I believe that's what it is. I believe that's exactly what this is. I believe certain people in this space don't want to move in rooms with Kshama Sawant because she's so critical of the Democratic Party. Let's continue.
They are a new labor union, and so they don't have robust strike funds, and they could benefit from that kind of help, all the way to helping organizations like One Fair Wage, which is trying to do away with the sub minimum wage. So there's a gap there, and We Are Somebody aims to fill it.
So interesting. And can you tell us a little bit more about the funding? Obviously, you have a nonprofit structure. So are you mostly looking for small dollar donors, that kind of crowdfunding thing, or looking to just get, funds from people who want to support workers?
Let me tell you how people full of shit. Because she goes, it's so interesting, as if she never heard of anything like this before. Not only has she heard of something like this, but her co-host, Ryan Grimm, who's sitting there, actually attacked Kshama Sawant verbally when Workers Strike Back was launched. That's right, boo. He attacked her verbally when Workers Strike Back was launched. criticized her. And I remember this. I DM'd him and said, what are you doing? He's like, they're trying to run some candidate. I'm like, they're not running anybody. This is an organization for the workers to help people start unions and to help people win when it comes to the strikes. Then he went back and deleted that tweet. That's why I can't show it to you. But this is bullshit. Ryan Grimm and her, they sitting up there like they have never heard of anything about this before. They have heard of it. They knew what worker strike back was, but you see what they do. They bring on Nina because Nina's a part of the Democratic Party. They bring her on to talk about her worker organization. But when Shama Sawant announced hers, Ryan Grimm was right at his Twitter thumbs to tear it down. It's not about the workers, because if it was really about the workers, you wouldn't have been attacking Shama Sawant because you got your ass kicked in that conversation with her on Bad Face. You wouldn't have been attacking Shama Sawant. You would have invited Shama Sawant on Breaking Points to talk about her organization the same way you're doing Nina Turner. But it's not about that. It's not about these damn workers. It's about the fact of you pushing things that are still going through the Democratic Party. And that's exactly what this organization is doing. And you cannot tell me differently. Because when you donate to Worker Strike Back, there's no Act Blue there, boo. Let's continue.
Yeah, thanks for that, Emily. It will be a multitude of those options. It will be grassroots donations, which I certainly have become a pro at doing in my 2 runs for Congress. It will be foundational support. We will seek grants from foundations that care very much about economic and social equality, and institutional donors are well. There are some wealthy people out there ultra wealthy people, I should say, out there who understand that there is an imbalance in the economy and that the pendulum has swung too far over, that we are really engaged in the second version of the Gilded Age, and that must be corrected. So I'm also going to help ultra wealthy people who want to do the right thing and make investments in trying to help workers level the playing field.
Help workers level the playing field. Like, this is just copycat motherfucker. I'm going to be better with my language tonight. I'm sorry. But the copycat, it just really bothers me. It bothers me.
So later today, you were telling us before we started taping that you're going to be heading to a parts plant where UAW workers are striking. As you also know, 75,000 KAISER workers walked off the job this morning. So walk us through, if the organization were up and running and fully funded at this point, and I guess there is no such thing as fully funded because of the depth of the need here, but let's say, funded in a greater capacity, what would We Are Somebody be doing either for, say, the KAISER workers or for the UAW?
You didn't give Shama Sawant this type of treatment when she launched her workers, organization. And notice what was said. We are going to take wealthy money as well. They're going to take money from people who are wealthy too. And to me, that says corporate donors. What's happening here, people? What's happening here? What happened to no corporate money? You want to take money from corporate donors?
Well, first of all, reaching out to those workers and the leaders of those workers to find out exactly what they need. But on the foundational point, it would be to organize, to fund, and to amplify their messages, to get that message out deep and wide. One of the concerns that I have, Ryan and Emily, as I talk to workers all across the country, and let me be more pointed. I went to Streetsboro here in Ohio, where there was a part plant that has about 122 workers there when they walked off the job about 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that the president of Local 573, when I asked him, what do you want the American people to know? He said, we want them to know that we're doing this for them. And talking to other workers, they were explaining that some people think that the UAW, for example, workers may be asking for too much, and they're not asking for too much. So this is as much about organizing the workers who are on the front lines and also educating the people who may be out there and have some misnomers about why workers are asking for a living wage. It's not too much to ask. And I think that we are navigating a society in American culture in particular where folks think it's okay for corporations to dominate and that working class people don't deserve to live a good life. They do deserve to live a good life. And so We Are Somebody is going to be a bridge. We're going to amplify. We are going to lift. We're going to help workers get their message out, and hopefully all workers will unite based on what they have in common. And the fact of the matter is that this economy is immoral and it is not working for everyday people in this nation.
All of them should be ashamed of themselves. All of them should be ashamed of themselves because they are literally sitting here pretending like something like this did not already exist. And Ryan Grimm can kiss my ass. I'll let you know that one. But this is just absolutely ridiculous. And I want to show you when she talked about this because, see, my memory is pretty good for the most part. And I want to pull this up. Now, I want to remind you, this is when Shama came on to discuss it on the show. So this was 8 months ago. January 20th, 2023. That was right before, right? So they were launching it in April. And I'm going to show you the part where she talks about launching the event. So let me just go forward. We'll pass the AOC thing because I know she talked about that too. There it is right there. So look, because she even talked about the demands. So you see, I just hate when people just copy, man. Give credit where credit's fucking due.
The failure of ordinary people, it shows you that social movements also need leadership who are accountable, principled, and who don't become part of the cozy club at the top, but are actually willing to put themselves on the line to win something meaningful.
100%. And I want to show everyone the demands here. This is Workers Strike Back. And here are some of the demands. Workers need a real raise, good union jobs for all, fight racism, sexism, and all oppression, quality, affordable housing, and free healthcare for all. And I like the fact that you have this here, Shama, the healthcare, because again, still advocating for everyone to have healthcare, but it's not attached to a political campaign. I think that's incredibly important. And also, no more sellouts. We need a new party. This is something that I think, and Eric, thank you so much for putting the link to the site in the chat. This is something I think, Shama, that people, a lot of us in the progressive movement expected Bernie Sanders to do. And we'll pause it right there. I'm not going to play the whole thing. But again, I wanted to show you, and this announcement from Shama Sawant was heavily suppressed in left independent media. Heavily suppressed. People didn't want to talk about it. It was all about Marianne Williamson's campaign that day. And Shama had put out the announcement for Workers Strike Back way before Marianne Williamson decided to announce that she was running for president. And it just makes me feel some kind of way. I call it like I see it. And this is BS. But you guys see what's happening, right? Let me go ahead and go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. I hate sloppy, grim jobs. Thank you, Christian. Watching this Grim/Nina clip makes me feel yucky and think banality of evil. Thank you, DC. Dems were for good things and against bad things. Thank you, Sean. Solidarity from ISA Scottish member. Shama is real deal. Get Shama Sawant back this week. Yes, I can try to do that. And I'll take the comment from Roger on Rockfin. Because you see what's happening here. I told you guys, the Democratic Party, you start these outside independent organizations and movements, and these Democrats will come in, grab a hold of it. If they don't change your organization, they'll copy and launch their own and water that shit down. Thank you for this, Roger. When I was a Dem, we were all back in 2018. Don't front, y'all. I wasn't only one. I went to a fundraiser in Queens as we were pushing for AOC. No IDC, a group of candidates looking to primary their own Crowley's in New York State Senate, but the big draw was Cynthia primarying Cuomo. I met Sarah pretty nice. I felt she was looking out for members. Cuomo's Women's Equality Party ballot line was to the Worker Family Party what Nina is to Worker Strike Back. Thank you for that, Roger. We're going to go to our next story here about Kaiser Permanente. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this organization, but it's basically a healthcare organization, and their employees have now launched the largest healthcare strike in history. This is huge. We're talking about over 70,000 employees, and the CEO of Kaiser Permanente makes a lot of money. So let's go ahead and get into this new striking news.
Well, right now, negotiators are scrambling to reach a deal and avoid the biggest healthcare strike in U.S. history. At midnight Pacific time, a contract for Kaiser Permanente employees ran out.
Yeah, more than 75,000 workers across the country will strike starting Wednesday if they can't reach a deal. Kaiser Permanente says operations will be continuing as normal this morning, but the clock is ticking. They released a statement just a few hours ago saying they reached tentative agreements in 4 spots, but continue to negotiate. We're going to talk with some union members right now. I want to introduce them. Caroline Lucas, the executive director for the Coalition of Kaiser Permanente Unions, and ultrasound tech Georgette Bradford. So good morning to both of you. Thank you for waking up with us this morning. I want to talk about Kaiser Permanente's statement in a second, but first to you, Georgette. A big part of all this is staffing shortages and what it's doing to healthcare workers and patients. What has it been like?
Thank you for asking that question, Omar. As an ultrasound technologist with Kaiser for nearly 20 years, I've never seen it this bad. For me in the facility, my coworkers are stressed, they're burnt out, leading to injuries. And we're also losing fellow coworkers to the burnout and the heavy workload because of the Kaiser short staffing crisis. But what does this mean to my patients? I do breast imaging. I work in a breast imaging center. And so a lot of my patients are coming in because they feel a lump or because something's been seen on their mammogram. And when they're delayed by weeks to get their exam, the amount of torture and anguish and worry that is inflicted on my patients not only is unacceptable, but I feel it's immoral. And I wouldn't want that to happen to my family member. I wouldn't want it to happen to your family member. And that's something that Kaiser executives can avoid by bargaining in good faith and coming to the table to fix the short staffing crisis.
So Caroline, then lay out for
I guess many of you can imagine, right, that waiting a long time for test results or imaging results can be very nerve-wracking for people.
us what union workers are asking for. Of course, I'd imagine it would include addressing the staffing shortages, but what else?
Absolutely. What we are worried about is fixing long-term the Kaiser staffing crisis. This has been a crisis that's been brewing for years, and Kaiser executives just aren't acting with the urgency that we need to create some long-term stable solutions to this crisis.
And Georgette, you laid out a little bit of what you had been through, in your more than a decade there. How have things shifted in your time? I know you said you've never seen things this bad. How have they shifted, and what have you heard from other workers, especially we're not that far removed from what I'm sure was an incredible strain on you all during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes. What we've seen and what I've seen in the change is a lack of the available staff to see our patients, not only in a timely manner, as I spoke to that one patient that had to wait weeks to get their exam, but also when we get them in the exam room, having to wait minutes, sometimes up to an hour or more just to be seen. I've had patients even leave in the middle of their exams between a mammogram and an ultrasound because the wait was entirely too long.
So we're talking about staffing shortage here, right? Why do companies have a staffing shortage? That's usually because people are quitting, and sometimes people are quitting in mass. So you end up with a staffing shortage. But why are they quitting? Obviously, a lot of times you may have to deal with the hours, the pay, the treatment of the job.
I've dealt with coming in weeks on end where before we even start the day, we're already short-staffed. We're already working in the hole. And that has progressed constantly. It's escalating. It's been compounded by the pandemic. The pandemic has caused our members to leave the industry early retirement. We have lost members. We've lost over 60 members in my union to COVID. And so this is a crisis of a healthcare staffing situation in our facilities.
I lost 3 dentists during the pandemic. 1 retired, 1 moved back to Saudi Arabia, just like peace the fuck out, and apparently didn't tell anybody that he moved until he was there. That was an interesting one. And the other one went back to nursing school. Excuse me, not nursing school. The other one went back to school. I said nursing school. The one of them went back to school. So I lost 3, like during the pandemic, right? But I think they're being a little bit too mild here. I think they need to be more critical of the nature of the work environment of the CEOs, the nature of the exploitation of the workers. I think they need to be more critical here.
So, Caroline, what do you know about where negotiations stand and how workers are preparing for this strike? Can it be avoided? And if I can go back to ask my first question to you again, if you can lay out what exactly the union is asking for. Again, you're asking for raises and job protections as well, correct?
Absolutely. So let me just say, Kaiser executives can avoid this today by reaching solutions, by reaching long-term solutions. Wages and benefits are an important component of an ultimate agreement that protects staffing levels that make sense for patients and for workers. It's one component, it isn't the only component. What we really need is deep investments in the infrastructure that helps secure our workforce. And that's something that we haven't seen Kaiser act creatively about. Kaiser executives haven't listened or bargained in good faith with the frontline healthcare workers who have the solutions to a lot of these complex, thorny issues.
How are the negotiations going? Do you know? And is a strike avoidable at this point?
Absolutely, a strike is avoidable. No worker goes into healthcare to be out on strike. They all go into healthcare to provide that healthcare to folks. So we are.
These two here, to me, what I noticed from this interview, they were too timid. You know, they like this kind of seemed rehearsed. The woman who's talking right now, I shouldn't have paused her like that.
Hoping that Kaiser executive.
She seems rehearsed to me. She's a little too nice, considering what's been happening to the staff, the employees, right? So I just felt like, I'm like, you guys haven't seen multiple interviews with other union members that have gone on strike. These two right here, I felt were being too nice. Pay attention to that.
Show up and listen and bargain in good faith. We are here day and night. We have been here day and night and will continue to be here until the moment folks walk out Wednesday morning.
And Georgette, we've seen strikes in the auto industry, the entertainment industry, now potentially healthcare here as well. Does that say anything to you as someone who is in a workforce that could potentially be affected? When you see some of the issues they are fighting for, does any of that resonate with you?
It does resonate with me in 2 ways. It resonates with me in that I know that there needs to be a sea change, that it's time for workers to really stand up for not only the communities that they serve, but also the work that they do. It's clear that the frontline workers in any industry are the experts in what they do. And I think that is kind of the genesis of what some are calling a hot union summer with all of this activity.
See, she's smiling too much for me. She just a little too cheesy with the camera. You know, when you talk to the workers on the street, they don't look like this. In fact, let's see what one of the workers that's out on the street, let's see how they respond. I want to show you the difference. Okay. I want to show you the difference. This is from More Perfect, a union. This is Shauna White, who is a cardiac monitor tech at Kaiser Permanente. Now, she had a 12-hour shift and she joined her union on the picket line. I'm going to show you the realness of it. Here we go.
This is amazing. And this isn't just for us. This is for other hospital workers, other people that they claimed were heroes and that they said, we were going above and beyond and we were, what was the term that they gave us for COVID? Frontline workers.
Essential workers.
Yeah, essential workers. And all of a
sudden,
sudden, that's all forgotten now. Now it's just like, no, we can't give you an increase. No, even though it shows, we could see on the internet how much they've made and profited. No, you don't deserve any of that. So that's what's really upsetting. They're okay to give the managers their bonuses, which they told them not to tell us about, but they
Stop it, Bryce. Stop it. And I knew one of you were going to say something. Stop. I knew it. I said, let's see if we can get through this without someone saying, I knew it, Bryce. Stop it. But anyway, what she's saying is they were once considered to be essential workers. And now that the pandemic's over, they're not looked at as essential anymore. They don't want to give them a raise, right? They're not really trying hard to keep them around. So this is something important for people to see.
Told us that they were in a hole and could not give us our bonuses. So that's a lot of the reason why we're here. It's dishonesty, and it's also just the integrity of it all.
Last thing, sorry, because I feel like I was talking over it when we were trying to figure out the name of the health plan, essential workers.
Yeah.
Could you just reiterate that point where you said, they called us healthcare workers during the pandemic, and they protect the healthcare workers, protect frontline workers, and then go on to explain how they're nowhere to be found when you actually need help.
He's good. Yes. For COVID, we were heroes, we were essential workers, and we were, they were so grateful for us and our help. And now times have changed and they can't remember that we're important and that we're appreciated. So, that's why we're here today. It's not something where it's only a pandemic where we need to be recognized. We work hard every day, every second of the day.
That's right. And by the way, I'm going to look up that company in just a second, because I remember seeing an interview with the CEO from Kaiser Permanente. This is when they were under some other type of criticism that happened with Kaiser Permanente. This was a couple years ago. No, I felt like something. Hold on, let me look him up. And I'm not looking at the chat no more because I see what you guys are saying. I couldn't even get through the video without laughing. Kaiser Permanente. Yeah, the CEO. I know I saw this guy before in another interview. Because these people, let me tell you something. These people are making bank, okay? Look at this. His name is Gregory Adams. And there's something I want to show you. I want to show you what he's connected to. So we're going to put this up in just a second. Watch this. All right. The CEO of Kaiser Permanente, his name is Gregory Adams. Now let's zoom in. I'm just going to read the first sentence. Okay. Gregory Adams is the chair and chief executive officer of Kaiser Foundation Health Plan, Inc. and hospitals known as Kaiser Permanente, one of America's leading integrated healthcare providers and not-for-profit health plans. I don't even need to read the rest of that because I want you to see what's at the very top of the page. World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum. This is on their site. You see this? So you see who he's associated with. So just to let you see, just wanted to let you know what's happening with Kaiser Permanente. The WEF. So yeah, just keep that in mind. we'll keep an eye on the strike to see how long it goes, to see if they will give them their raise increase that they are recommending. Oh my God, I made a mistake and looked at the chat. You guys are wild tonight. They are recommending. I'm just going to go ahead and get the laugh out. I can't. Okay, anyway, we'll check that out and see how it goes in the future, because that connection there is sus. But they don't have money to pay their workers. Come on. Okay. Oh dear gosh. Let's show that poll. Can we show the poll, Eric? I'm sorry. I can't stop laughing. I don't know if I can have a straight face now. Thank you for this poll. Thank you for the poll results. All right. We took a poll tonight. Dr. West should run as a ... And I said, should he run as a Democrat? 3% said Democrat. Should he run as a Green? 29% said Green. Should he run as an independent? 43% said independent. And then there was the option of, I just don't know. And 25% of you said, I don't know. And I appreciate that on the real. If you don't know, you don't know. I'm not going to be one of those, teachers that's like, you have to give an answer. Like, how some teachers used to ridicule like students that would say they don't know. Like, no, if you don't know, you just don't know. That's 1,277 votes. So thank you so much for that. And I do just want to start really quick. I'll do the intro for Wisconsin ballot measures, and then we'll do call in, and we'll go from there. But I'm not even gonna get through the whole thing because I have the laughs in my head now, and sometimes once you start laughing, you can't finish laughing. You can't stop. Wisconsin ballot initiatives. Wisconsin voters do not have the right to place their own initiatives on the ballot to pass and repeal state laws and amend the Wisconsin Constitution on their own. I'm sorry. There's nothing funny about this. I can't even do it. Voters only have the power to ratify into the Wisconsin Constitution what the legislator puts before them through what's called a legislative referred constitutional amendment, aka state legislator initiative. The following initiatives took place in a special election this year on April 4th, 2023. Ooh, this one's, I do want to make sure I mention this one, and then we'll finish it tomorrow. Question 1, conditions of release before conviction amendment. A yes vote supported amending the state constitution to allow the state legislature to define what serious harm means in relation to the bail conditions that judges impose on accused persons persons released before their criminal trial for the purpose of protecting members of the community from serious harm. This measure was ratified by 66.55%. Who supported it? State Senator Van Wangard. All Republicans supported this. Also, the district attorney. Candidates that supported it, Daniel Kelly, who's apparently nonpartisan, and Janet Clare, who's also nonpartisan. That's interesting. And there was the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association. That's one of the unions that supported it. Americans for Prosperity, Wisconsin State Lodge Fraternal Order of the Police. So this is something that police obviously supported here. And then arguments. State Senator Van Wangard. First, it allows a judge to consider serious harm to others instead of serious bodily harm when setting conditions of release. This is an important change because serious bodily harm is a statutorily defined term, essentially meaning harm that could cause death or serious permanent disfigurement. Who opposed it? State Representative Sue Conley, and some of the organizations that opposed it was the ACLU of Wisconsin. And one of their defenses were These measures were placed on the ballot by Republicans in the legislature after contentious political debate. They arise from the politicization of the Waukesha, that's an interesting name, Waukesha Christmas parade tragedy. Oh yeah, I remember that. And they aim to change the criminal justice system so it is easier to keep people who have been arrested but not convicted of a crime behind bars as they await trial. That's important, guys. Arrested but not convicted. And this does happen, right? And if you don't have the money to pay for bail, you're kind of just sitting there, right? There was no campaign money spent to support or oppose it. Roger has a commentary here. As I've outlined and read, sometimes if you're confused about a measure, what you got to do is take a look at who supports it and who opposes it. Now, what this does not do and what we should be more focused on is the fact that this is a reform, but it's not a solution. The whole issue is law enforcement and rule of law advocates don't want dangerous people walking around the community before a trial date. While those who advocate for innocence until proven guilty say they've not been duly convicted, putting the accused in jail for prolonged periods of time without a trial simply but not having the dough is more of an economic injustice. Yet no one is coming up with ideas to enforce the Sixth Amendment, which says a right to a speedy trial with no delay. But even with that, I always push back and say, define speedy. What do they mean when they say a speedy trial? Is speedy like 2 months, 3 months, a year from now? We need to talk about that amendment one day, which says the right to a speedy trial with no delay. Where's the amendment to fully finance the public defender's office, as well as to get more judges, hiring more staff to provide them with resources necessary to move these cases along? Doing that ends this fight. That's a good point there, Roger. And I'll finish the rest of Wisconsin tomorrow night. I'm not going to be able to get through. I'm still in laugh mode because you guys were cracking me up. But I'm going to do call in right after this. I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll be back for call in.
All right. All right, here we go. This is where we give our Sabrina a little break before we jump into the call-in. Here, let me bring up the call-in screen for what we'll be talking about, but she'll go over it again. We'll be giving you the link where you can bring call-in up on your browser. Yep, call-in is still going. We'll keep waiting for the app to die or go away or something, but it's still around. Let's see, tonight. Yeah, Cornell West goes independent. So we want to, in high price, and we want to hear what you all think about Cornell West's the new move, all this news. Of course, you can talk about anything you want in the old call-in. You can call in to the browser on your cell phone. If you want, let's see, if you want some early access to the call-in page, I'll put the link in the chat right now, just to do it. But Sabrina usually pins it as the and hi Sylvia, usually pins it as the pin chat. Yeah, it's always a thing when you're up here on the mic, how much you look at the chat, because yeah, it'll get you. Chat will get you sometimes. All right, speaking of chat, let's look at a couple of paid chats we got queued up here. Thanks for this one, Louise Brooks. Can we all donate to Workers Strike Back on Nina's behalf and let Nina know we donated to Workers Strike Back and are glad she is working for Shama? That's it's an interesting strategy. I'd go for that. And thanks for the super chat, Sparky, with a bit of a pronunciation help here for Permanente. Thanks for the super chat, Sparky. And we got a couple here on the old Rockfins. Let's see, we'll slide that in. Thanks for this paid tipped comment on Rockfin, Dave. Definitely two nice Sabs. So he was talking about the two women in the Kaiser Permanente story, and saying they were definitely two nice Sabs. They might have sent these two, though, to speak to big corporate media with the right talking points. But no, they need some real hot union talk now. And also, thanks for this one, JVB, tip comment, keep it up, Sabby. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that occurred to me is like they should be like the news should be down there on the with talking to the strikers on the line. You want to see, what the real people think. So this is a break between call-in. We'll be shifting over to the call-in where we can hear from you. We want to know what you think. All right. We had a busy day. I mean, it's like we're in this reality now where every day is this big news day and announcement and crazy stuff here and there, and it never seems to end. But one of the things I wanted to bring up here quickly was that kind of trying to bring this back to the real way things work. And there was a tweet that Sabrina put up a few days ago where she highlighted a chart from this article from this guy Wolf Street. But what's really interesting is the chart. And we'll increase this size a bit. That should work. This chart, let me get down to it. There's the chart. A little too big. Yeah. That'll work. So this is a chart. The other size is better. About tracking the wealth percentages. We're going from 2000 to the present day, and this is looking at how much of the wealth of the country that each group holds. And so you've got, of course, what really stands out is the top 0.1%, which is something I really like to emphasize is what just how unbelievably and how incredibly much more wealth you have in these small number of hands, the top 0.1%. These are the billionaires. These are the 100 millionaires. And going from 2000 to the present day, you just see this constant increase. And it's just kind of amazing. And, you come into like the 2009 recession, and they have a bit of a dip, and then it's just shooting right back up. And you have like the during the pandemic and lockdowns, right? 2021, the wealth of the billionaires shot up. So while the rest of us were struggling and scraping along in lockdowns, shutdowns, they made bank. And that's because they were invested in companies that supported remote work, like Zoom and these remote work, these things, and their wealth just skyrocketed. And then you look at the top 1%, and they've had kind of this slow increase generally, but it's nothing like the top 0.1. And you look at the other percentages, and you get down to like this green line, like the next 40%, and it's hard to even measure on the same graph. And this is where the wealth is going. This is where the resources are going, and this is hugely important, because then these same billionaires are using these wealth and this resource. They funnel billions of dollars back into the political system and get their way. And so they affect the tax system, they affect the business regulations, the whole thing, through political contributions, the legalized bribery that we see in the system. And what and so when we're talking about having a platform, having political parties and solutions that we fix these things, this is the thing that we need to really keep in focus, is the money and what we do about it. And so if you're going to be addressing and going after the money, then you really have to be talking about things like the campaign finance reform, like fixing the Constitution so that money is not speech, and the corruption. And so I feel like we need a mass movement. We need numbers. I mean, that's really where our power is in the numbers. We need a mass movement, and I can't think of a better thing to focus a mass movement on than corruption. And so any real left campaign that is really going to get a movement going, I think really needs to put corruption and fixing the money front and center. And so that's my pitch for that one for the moment.
I think, what's his name? Joe Firestone. Remember what he said about focusing on the corruption and dumping the incumbents? I think he was right with the messaging.
And it's a winner of an issue. Because if you ask anybody, they think Congress is corrupt. They're going to say, oh, yeah, duh. And if you ask Case, we'll say we see Case in the call-in.
Case is in the house. Every time Case comes on, I get super excited. Case and neoliberal tears have been the clippy clips. They have the clips.
Flipping it for the win. All right. Time to shift over to the call. Let me get that queued up. Yeah. There we go. All right. See y'all's in call-in.
All right. Call in. Yes, we are doing that tonight. We're going to head on over there, honey buns. This is episode 129. I'm still having trouble loading episode 128. I thought I published it, but thing didn't show up. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, Cornel West goes independent. Let's discuss. I kept it short and brief. Let's see you over there. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. And so super excited. If you're having difficulty with the app, you can do it through the laptop as well, guys. Just FYI. I know some people had difficulty through the app. But you can also call in from the laptop too. I thought that was a cool feature that they added. But I will see you guys over there. If you didn't do so, hit that like button. Cornel West will be here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget, it's a time change, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Hope to see you then. Until then, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.